Hey babes, welcome back. I put out a little voter poll and you guys all voted. Majority vote came back and you all wanted to see how to make locks at home with no tools. This is a little tutorial on starting locks at home. You don't need any tools. Actually, I lied when I said no tools. You're gonna need a beanie and you're gonna need some good bar soap or good shampoo. Even baby shampoo works really well. So if you don't know, my name is Shane Fallon. This is where we talk about hair. I've been studying hair since 2006, and I first started wearing locks on my head and studying locks back in '99. So you can imagine I might have a little info for you. No other tools but your hands, a beanie, and some shampoo. And of course, a whole bunch of time and effort. So, first things first, it's very important, man, if you're starting locks at home and you're doing all your own work, it is a lot of work for you to have good dreadlocks, period. It just is. Whether you have a loctician or not, but when you're at home doing all your own stuff, it's a lot of work. It can also be zero work. So the cool thing about natural locks, when you're doing them all on your own and just letting things happen, there's such a wide variety of ways you can do this. You can literally just leave your hair alone, and it will eventually lock. If you have straight and wavy hair types, it's gonna take quite a bit longer before those cuticles start to fray and catch onto each other, and you'll start a bud. It's usually around 8 months to a year. Sometimes 6 months if you're really lucky and got fine hair. Then there's things like twist and rip and backcombing and separating stuff out. That's a little bit further on the manipulating of a hair strand scale. And then furthermore, you get into braiding and crochet work past natural, just leaving it alone. So where I'm bringing you in this scale is somewhere in between there, which is very light manipulation, no tools, and still allowing the natural 5 stages of dreadlock maturity to happen on their own. No crochet work, no pushing. Well, I shouldn't say no pushing, very little pushing. The reason I have this beanie with me, and this happens to be a protective style beanie, I'm not putting a regular beanie on my head right now to show you guys this. This is for demonstrational purposes only. You will want a regular beanie that's knitted crocheted yarn all the way through, not silk on the inside, like a protective one. This is so that my hair is protected while I'm showing you guys these methods. There's also a really cool tool out there called the Dread Sponge, and I'll put a picture in there. That's easier. It works great for curly hair. It works great for straight hair too. That's the cool thing about it. This beanie's doing essentially the same thing. Now, if you have a more 3C, 4C hair type, this is gonna work really quick. Dread Sponge is gonna be better because it's gonna have little knobbies that keep everything in a more gridded manner because the little knobbies create little separations. Now, rocking a beanie and soap, this is like the original way back in the 90s, back when I was a little bit old. Some of my first sets were done like this. In fact, most of my first sets were done like this. I utilized my hands more than a beanie. If any of you guys know me in person, you know that this is one of my things, and I'm like always up here twisting these things. It's not because I'm ditzy, it's because I used to start my dreads this way. There's a lot of playing with your hair all the time, so now when I have locks, I just have this habit that goes along with them from those days. Now let's get into a little bit of the demonstration. Now what needs to happen is we need to somehow mimic fraying of a cuticle as minimal as we can possibly get, right? So a bar of soap is the most minimal we can possibly get with. Just dry your hair out with a nice bar of soap, which just shampoo with it twice, cleanse everything off of it, and get it all like that squeaky clean, right? That's gonna get it so that the cuticles are just ever so slightly frayed out from your cortex. And if each individual hair is dry enough, they'll start to catch each other. What you do next is after you've dried your hair, now these are kind of long, let me pretend like they're not there. My hair's nice and short. Generally speaking, you want somewhere around 3 to 5 inches of hair to start. If it's any longer, you're gonna get some really big clumps and different things. You kind of want shorter hair for this. So what you do is after your hair's dry, you get your beanie on and you just rub around in circles constantly. Quick advertisement to remind you to subscribe about it. It's kind of like root rubbing, but you're doing it on a big, huge basis all the way around the globe, right? And so every time you start to feel hairs go underneath your hands and clump up in little separations. And so you'll see it kind of clump up in little separations, and as it pulls out, you'll end up with something like this. Little froed out, right? And there are gonna be little spikies all over the place, little baby dreadies. Those are little startings. You wanna be up there messing with them a little bit, finger rolling them, because you can't really get in and palm roll everyone, right? So you're up here kind of twisting at the base, separating stuff out, going through your whole head. It kind of creates a little bit of a habit, but you're doing this every day, as well as rubbing your head constantly. In the beginning, it's over and over and over again. You're really looking for friction. And as that friction happens, it's gonna fray those cuticles out and everything's gonna grab each other. The hands on the head or the knobbies on the Dread Sponge are all gonna do a similar thing. You're going around in circles and you're gonna create separations. that'll continue and continue and continue. As long as you're separating, palm rolling, and doing this, you will form locks. It'll happen. It's a nice, slow, low way. There's not a whole lot more work involved in it. Separating, palm rolling, and root rubbing is extremely important when you're doing this type of a style. This is all no tools, and so it's not tight. It's like a fluffier base, and so you're root rubbing everything, and it's gonna fluff up. Essentially, root rubbing is what you do to create this effect that you started with. Root rubbing continues that effect throughout the rest of your lock journey, as they're too long to actually rub underneath your head like that. So there isn't really a whole lot more to get you into with this style of starting your locks, but this is my favorite way to start locks without a crochet hook. Now, there are a few other methods. You've got parting out the head, back combing, and palm rolling. A lot of people include twist and rip inside of this, or vice versa, both. This way works really well. Your separations are gonna be whatever you make them there, whereas this separation, or your dread spun separation, is gonna be more of a natural separation of what your hair naturally wants to do. It's gonna go where it wants, right? Whereas if you're gridding it out, you're doing it. And so your hair isn't necessarily all where it wants to be. It's a little less natural, or should I say, not as much manipulation of the hair strand involved going this route, where you get that nice natural separation of where locks want to be. Either method requires separating, palm rolling, possibly root rubbing. This way has a different cohesive look to it, whereas when you're getting crochet work, it's very well separated and extremely nice and neat for about a week, and then it's getting fuzzier for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then a little bit of unruliness by the time you go see your Loctician again. Obviously different cycles and different times with all of that, though it's kind of the gist of it. With this route, and you're separating and palm rolling and root rubbing all the time in your natural route, this always looks very similar. There isn't much of a different look. You don't have a prim and proper versus bad hair day. There's no such thing. No bad hair days. So, with locks, you generally don't have bad hair days anyways. They're just sometimes unruly. Anyways, babes, stay tuned for that at-home maintenance with no tool. I'm gonna throw in there a little bit of crochet work at home and kind of show you guys a little bit of that stuff if you were venturing into that. So stay tuned for that. It's coming up. Happy locking, babes.